Welcome to Stoic Golden Tribe, where men are forged through wisdom, pain, and discipline. If you're a man who's ever been broken by love, betrayed by someone you trusted, or left questioning your own worth, this message is for you. Because every strong man, no matter how powerful, faces a moment when love brings him to his knees, not by swords or battles, but by emotions that cut deeper than steel. And yet, it's in that very pain that the strongest version of him begins to rise. In this video, we'll walk the path of the Stoics, men like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, who understood that heartbreak is not the end of a man's story. It's the beginning of his rebirth. We'll explore how to transform emotional pain into strength, how to stand firm when love tries to break you, and how to rise again, wiser, calmer, and more powerful than ever before. Because a man who can master his heart can conquer his entire world. So take a deep breath, stand tall, and listen closely. You're not broken, you're becoming. And before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stoic Golden Tribe, where modern men learn the timeless art of strength, honor, and emotional mastery. Chapter 1. The Fall of a Strong Man. They say a strong man can face anything: war, hunger, loss, and pain. But what truly breaks him is the silent wound of love. It's not the sword that pierces his armor, but the trust he gave that was never returned. The loyalty that was met with betrayal. The soft voice that once calmed his storms, now echoing only in memory. A strong man doesn't fall apart because he's weak. He falls because he cares. He's not afraid of struggle, but when the heart he protected turns against him, the battle becomes internal. It's not a fight with the world anymore, it's a war within himself. He questions everything: his worth, his choices, his very identity. He wonders, how could something that felt so right end so painfully wrong? And that's when the fall begins. Not a physical fall, but a spiritual one, a collapse of everything he believed love to be. Even the greatest men have walked through this valley. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor-philosopher, endured grief and heartbreak, yet found wisdom in pain. He didn't run from emotion, he faced it with reason. He wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to love, to act." Those weren't just words, they were reminders that even when the heart aches, life still demands purpose. And so the Stoic lesson begins. When love breaks a strong man, he must resist the temptation to drown in self-pity. He must understand the end of affection is not the end of him. The world will try to convince him that he failed, that his strength wasn't enough to keep love alive. But a Stoic knows that control ends where choice begins. He can influence, guide, and give, but he can never possess another's will. That realization hurts at first because every strong man wants to protect, to fix, to make things right. But heartbreak teaches him the hardest truth. Sometimes walking away is an act of higher strength. In ancient times, warriors would sharpen their blades before battle, but the Stoics believed a man must also sharpen his mind before facing emotional storms, because it's not the betrayal itself that destroys you, it's the way you interpret it. It's the stories you tell yourself in the dark. When she leaves, when the love fades, the strong man must choose his response carefully. He can become bitter, or he can become better. He can curse his pain, or he can transform it into wisdom. That choice, that moment of discipline, defines who he truly is. So he begins to rebuild quietly. He stops chasing what has left and starts cultivating what remains: his purpose, his focus, his peace. He learns to sit with his emotions without letting them control him. He learns to forgive, not because the other person deserves it, but because he refuses to stay a prisoner to anger. He learns to value solitude, to find power in stillness, and to recognize that a man's worth was never meant to be measured by who loves him, but by how he carries himself when no one does. And so he stands again. not as the same man who fell, but as one reborn through pain, clearer, wiser, and more dangerous in his calm. Because a man who has faced the storm of love and survived no longer fears the wind. When love breaks a strong man, it does not end him. It awakens him. It strips away the illusions, the dependencies, and the false beliefs, until only truth remains. And in that truth he discovers his real power, the strength to let go and still move forward. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced a heartbreak that transformed you into someone wiser, calmer, and stronger than before? Chapter 2. Rebuilding the Warrior Within. When a man has been broken by love, he stands at a crossroads. One path leads to bitterness, regret, and emotional decay. The other, the Stoic path, leads to rebirth, power, and self-mastery. But make no mistake, rebuilding after heartbreak isn't a matter of days or weeks. It's a process of transformation, a slow, deliberate forging of the spirit. The same way iron becomes steel only through fire, a man becomes unshakable only through pain. In the beginning, silence becomes his teacher. He stops chasing answers. He stops looking for closure that will never come. Instead, he starts turning inward. He begins to understand that healing doesn't come from being loved again. It comes from learning to love himself in the absence of her. This is where the Stoic discipline comes alive. Epictetus, once a slave who became one of history's greatest philosophers, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And that truth becomes the foundation of a man's recovery. He begins by reclaiming control over the only battlefield that truly mattered, his mind. He learns that his thoughts are either his prison or his weapon. So he starts observing them like a warrior studies his enemy. Every time a painful memory surfaces, he doesn't run from it. He faces it, breathes through it, and lets it pass without feeding it. This is emotional discipline, the art of not allowing your feelings to dictate your direction. He rises early. He trains his body because the discipline of the flesh sharpens the discipline of the mind. He reads, not to escape, but to understand. He writes, not to complain, but to make sense of the storm inside. He begins to rebuild his world one habit at a time. No alcohol, no distractions, no desperate searching for validation. Instead, he replaces old addictions with purpose. He starts spending time in silence, nature, solitude, places where his thoughts can breathe. And slowly, the man who once felt shattered begins to find strength in simplicity. The Stoics believed that the greatest victory is victory over oneself, and heartbreak gives a man that opportunity, because when the world has stripped away comfort, affection, and approval, what remains is the truth of his character. He learns that not every battle needs to be fought. Sometimes, strength means walking away without explanation, forgiving without apology, and choosing peace over revenge. He no longer reacts out of emotion. He responds out of understanding. That's the moment he crosses from being just a man to becoming a Stoic. In this stage, he becomes dangerous, not because he seeks to harm, but because he is unshakable. You can reject him, insult him, betray him, and he will not break. He has built a fortress inside himself, and no one can enter it without his permission. He no longer needs closure from anyone. He no longer needs approval from anyone. He no longer needs love to feel worthy, and because his worth now flows from within. This is the stage of emotional sovereignty, where a man realizes he owns himself completely. The pain that once haunted him now becomes his greatest teacher. He starts to see that the heartbreak was not a curse. It was a cleansing. It removed from his life what was never meant to stay. It taught him to choose peace over passion, purpose over pleasure, and wisdom over attachment. When he looks back, he no longer feels anger. He feels gratitude. Gratitude for the storm that tore him apart. Because without it, he would have never found his inner calm. And as he rises, others notice. Not because he seeks attention, but because true strength always radiates quietly. He becomes a man of few words, steady eyes, and unshakable energy. He has learned that power doesn't shout. It whispers through calm presence. His discipline becomes his identity, his solitude becomes his sanctuary, and his purpose becomes his new love, because when a man learns to master himself, the world can no longer master him. He no longer chases, he attracts. He no longer reacts and he chooses. He no longer begs, he builds. That is the transformation of a broken man into a stoic warrior, not through revenge, not through validation, but through quiet evolution. And one day, when he meets someone new, he won't love out of emptiness or fear of being alone. He will love from fullness, from power, from balance, from peace, because he has learned that love is not meant to complete him. It is meant to complement the man he already is. So to every man rebuilding himself after heartbreak, remember this: the goal isn't to be loved again. The goal is to become someone love cannot break again. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What's one stoic habit or mindset that has helped you rise above emotional pain? Chapter 3. Turning pain into power and purpose. A man who has walked through the fire of heartbreak is no longer the same. He has tasted the edge of despair, the silence after goodbye, the emptiness of a bed once shared, the echo of memories that once brought warmth but now bring cold. But if he endures, if he refuses to drown in sorrow, something extraordinary happens. His pain begins to transform, because pain, when understood, is not destruction. It is awakening. The Stoics believed that suffering reveals the true nature of a man. It strips away all illusions, the false confidence, the pride, the need for external approval. What remains is his essence, raw and honest. In that naked truth, he begins to rebuild himself, not as he was, but as he was meant to be. He no longer asks, why did this happen to me? Instead, he asks, what is this trying to teach me? That shift in perspective is the first sign of wisdom, the moment when emotion gives birth to understanding. When Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, he said, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests brave men." And that is the lesson heartbreak delivers. It is the fire that reveals whether a man is made of wax or steel. At first the fire burns. It hurts to let go of love. It hurts to see her move on while you are still standing in the ruins. But in time, you begin to realize something powerful. The pain that once broke you is now building you. Each tear, each sleepless night, each moment of silence becomes a brick in the foundation of your new self. You start turning inward for guidance and outward for purpose. You begin to live with a clarity that few ever reach. Because you now understand what truly matters, you learn that chasing pleasure leads to emptiness, that needing constant validation leads to weakness, and that peace, true peace, can only exist when your happiness depends on nothing and no one but your own actions and mindset. This is when a man's transformation becomes visible, not in his body, not in his words, but in his presence. He walks differently. He no longer rushes. His eyes no longer seek approval. They observe. They understand. They command respect without demanding it. He speaks less but means more. He acts with intention. He lives by values, integrity, discipline, loyalty, and purpose. Because he's realized that when everything external can be taken away, the only thing that lasts is character. History remembers such men. Men like Marcus Aurelius, who lost children, faced betrayal, and carried an empire on his shoulders, yet ruled with calm wisdom. Men like Epictetus, born into slavery, crippled by cruelty, but free in spirit because no one could touch his mind. And men like Viktor Frankl, who, though imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps centuries later, wrote that even in the darkest suffering, man's ultimate freedom lies in the power to choose his response. These men faced hell and emerged unbroken, because they mastered the same truth every heartbroken man must learn. Suffering is not your enemy. It's your greatest mentor. And so the man begins to use his pain as fuel. He trains harder. He focuses deeper. He builds the business, writes the book, creates the art, leads the team, not to impress anyone, but to honor the man he's becoming. Every action now carries intention. Every day, he reminds himself, if I can survive heartbreak, I can survive anything. He no longer sees failure as defeat, but as feedback. He no longer runs from loneliness, but uses solitude as a forge for greatness. He no longer wastes energy chasing love, because his energy is now invested in purpose. And purpose is the ultimate cure for heartbreak. Because when a man finds meaning in his pain, his suffering becomes sacred. He realizes that everything he lost was guiding him toward everything he was meant to become. The betrayal was not a curse, it was redirection. The heartbreak was not punishment, it was refinement. The loss was not an ending, it was a test of how deeply he could rise. He becomes the type of man whose presence inspires others without words. Other men watch him and wonder how he stays calm under pressure. They wonder how he can forgive those who hurt him and still stand tall. They don't understand that he has already fought the hardest war, the one inside himself, and won. And now he leads not through ego, but through example. He becomes a quiet mentor to those still trapped in pain. He tells them, it's not the heartbreak that defines you, it's what you build from it. He reminds them that strength isn't about avoiding pain, it's about using pain as a teacher, because the man who learns from heartbreak becomes unshakable, untouchable, and unstoppable. As he walks forward, the world no longer frightens him. Rejection, betrayal, loss. These are no longer threats. He's already been to the bottom and discovered that he can breathe there. He knows now that every fall holds a lesson, and every wound hides wisdom. His heart may still remember, but it no longer hurts. It has become his compass, guiding him toward deeper understanding, not attachment. He knows love will come again, but this time he will love without losing himself, because now he loves as a man who has mastered himself. In the end, the heartbreak didn't break him. It introduced him to the man he was always meant to be. It awakened his mind, refined his soul, and anchored his purpose. And from that purpose, he rises. Not just for himself, but for others who have yet to rise. Because a healed man becomes a light for those still walking through the dark. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever turned pain into purpose, or found meaning in something that once broke you? Chapter 4. The Unshakable Man, Master of Peace and Purpose. When a man reaches this stage, heartbreak no longer defines him, it refines him. He has faced the storm, he has walked through fire, and he has come out the other side not burned, but purified. The love that once broke him has now become the lesson that shaped him. The pain that once silenced him has now become the voice of his strength. He understands now that real power isn't loud. It's quiet, patient, and disciplined. He no longer seeks to control the woman who left, or the world that hurt him. He seeks to command himself, and that is the essence of Stoicism, to master the inner world so deeply that the outer world loses its control over you. He wakes early, not to escape his thoughts, but to align them. He trains his body not for attention, but for respect, self-respect. He spends time in solitude, not out of bitterness, but because silence has become his sanctuary. And in that silence, he begins to see clearly the man he was, the man he became, and the man he is destined to be. He no longer wastes his energy proving his worth to anyone. He knows that the man who must explain his strength has already lost it. His calmness now speaks louder than any words. His peace is his armor. His discipline is his weapon. People notice the change. They sense it in the way he moves. Slow, deliberate, controlled. He no longer reacts to every emotion or insult. He responds with wisdom because his mind is no longer a battlefield. It has become a fortress. When chaos surrounds him, he doesn't panic. He breathes, he thinks, and he acts. That is what separates the common man from the Stoic man. Composure. He no longer lives for approval or revenge. He lives for alignment between thought, action, and purpose. And when he looks back at the heartbreak that once destroyed him, he no longer feels hatred, or regret. He feels gratitude because that pain forced him to evolve. It forced him to find meaning in the ruins. It forced him to rebuild from within. He's not the same man who fell apart. He's wiser, sharper, calmer. He has learned that peace isn't found in perfection, it's found in control. And control isn't about power over others, it's power over yourself. So to every man listening, remember this. True strength is not about being untouched by pain, it's about transforming it into wisdom. True masculinity is not in domination, it's in discipline. And true peace is not in escape, it's in endurance. The unshakable man doesn't avoid storm, he learns how to walk through them without losing himself. He doesn't run from heartbreak, he turns it into fuel for greatness. He doesn't cling to what's lost, he builds what's eternal. Because once a man learns to master his emotions, no loss can defeat him again. He becomes calm in the storm, focused in chaos and dangerous in peace. He becomes a man not just of strength, but of depth, wisdom, and control. If this message touched your spirit, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Stoic Golden Tribe, where modern men learn the timeless art of strength, discipline, and emotional mastery. And drop your thoughts below. What does being unshakable mean to you as a man today?